Greetings, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at Space Cowboy Books Online for the beginning of Season 4 of Flash Science Fiction Night. Tonight, we've got a wonderful lineup for you. We're going to have Howard V. Hendrix, Jiang, and Hailey Piper sharing some Flash fiction with you. We're going to start off the show with Howard V. Hendrix. Howard V. Hendrix is the author of 6 novels, 4 from Ace Books, 2 from Del Rey Random House, 5 collections of shorter works, most recently The Girls with Kaleidoscope Eyes, Fairwood Press, 2019, and has edited or co-edited 6 books of nonfiction. His short fiction and essays appear regularly in Analog. His most recent publication is the poetry collection Living Fossils Are the Happiest Kind from In Case of Emergency Press. He is currently at work on a 75,000-word nonfiction book on the science and fiction of population and extinction from McFarlane and Company. He taught writing and literature at the college level for 40 years, but is writing more regularly since retirement. I'm going to hand it over to Howard to read A Most Humble Innovation.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it, John Paul. Hello, everybody. I recognize a face or two out there. Hi, Hailey. Just a background, I'm reading a piece called A Most Humble Innovation. I started with Flash fiction years ago, before it was called Flash fiction. My first story I ever published was called Micro Story in a journal called Syzygy back in fall of 1979, a long time ago. What I'm going to be reading tonight also had a long and winding history. The first version of it, which was called Human Energy, A Modest Proposal to Save the World, I stopped working on that version in December 16th, 2010. I know this because I look at my desktop. Because I couldn't come up with an ending that worked, a voice that quite worked. Fast forward to still the past, January 2012, and I was looking back through my desktop and I happened to see it again, and I was rummaging around. I thought, well, maybe this will work. Maybe I can make it work. I worked on it again, off and on, going back actually to Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, and looking at how he had actually worked with the kind of satire that I was working on. And so I owe him for that. May his ghost appreciate that. I finally sent it to Analog in March of 2022. I got the contract in June of 2022, and it appeared in the March-April 2023 issue of Analog. It was my third flash fiction piece for Analog. So even though I spent a lot of time writing novels, I keep coming back to very short things. And this is April 23rd, 2024. I wish to remember that this is the 460th anniversary of Shakespeare's birth and the 408th anniversary of Shakespeare's death. Makes it easy. He was born and died on the same day, separated by 52 years. This is the first time I will have read this piece. So here goes. I can read off the side, or I can read it from how it appeared in Analog. Either way work for you folks. All right, good enough. This is called A Most Humble Innovation. Polar bears drowning as they swim between dwindling ice floes. Glaciers breaking off or melting and retreating, sometimes imperiling water supplies for hundreds of millions, sometimes lifting sea levels to unprecedented heights. Wildland fires from Siberia and Alaska to Australia and Zimbabwe. Spring coming ever earlier, producing ever longer pollen, insect, and parasite seasons. Great plastic gyres gimbling in waves, visible from space junk. Virus spillovers in the wildland-urban interface. International environmental agreements, little more than loopholes and promises. At the same time, resource allocation wars fought for wealth and dominion over the very fuels which, when utilized, contribute to all the aforementioned conditions. Global financial conditions that have resulted in over 250 million unemployed and at least 2 billion, half the world's labor force, vulnerably employed. Vast economic inequity and inequality. Governments collapsing, unable to simultaneously pay off their debts and maintain social safety nets. Nearly 30 million human beings doomed to die of starvation this year, not to mention those dead of recurring pandemics. Over 1 billion human beings who will be chronically malnourished or undernourished, to the point of gravely imperiling their long-term health and well-being. Yet, what if? What if we view these economic and ecological situations not as two separate global crises, but instead recognize that one provides the solution to the other. The Chinese character for crisis can famously be read as both danger and opportunity. Through the utilization of surplus human biomass, SHB, we can transform a global danger into a global opportunity. Like wind, solar, tidal, and nuclear power, and unlike fossil fuels, SHB, that's surplus human biomass, is carbon neutral. When fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas are burned, the carbon they have kept tied up in the earth for ages is added to the current carbon cycle, and greenhouse gas load. SHB for heating or power doesn't release fossil carbon because the carbon a body can store or release when burned is all part of the current carbon cycle. Unlike the limited number of appropriate and available generation sites for wind, solar, and tidal power, locations suitable to SHB power generation can be found virtually everywhere one finds human beings. Unlike nuclear power's radioactive byproducts that can linger hundreds of millions of years, SHB's byproducts are almost entirely non-radioactive, non-toxic, local, and short-term in their effects. Let's be honest, though. Apart from all the altruistic arguments, the amount of energy this fuel can potentially provide is simply tremendous. One bone-dry ton, one BDT, equivalent to roughly 3 wet or red tons, RT, of surplus human biomass, standard commercial boiler as sparkle, will conservatively produce 60,000 pounds of steam, or 6,000 horsepower, or 6 megawatt hours MWH of electricity for smart grid distribution. Each year, tens of millions of bodies are made available through untimely death, not only via natural causes, but also through genocide and other ordinary operate the current global economic and political. These bodies represent vast untapped fuel reserves. Given the implication of all those previously mentioned numbers of it's likely that the reserves of this previously neglected feedstock may see considerable future growth. We have finally reached the point in our evolution where we can make everything better by making everything worse. No wonder the investment banking and financial sectors, along with the energy companies, are all over the human energy of SHB, especially when those sectors and companies done so much conditions which have so greatly expanded SHB availability. Let's talk about a win-win. SHB, that's again surplus human biomass, is a renewable, real-time, locally and regionally, but not globally transportable fuel. It is processable in facilities scalable from small mobile units to large industrial plants, and is extracted in a manner that provides economic, environmental, and social benefits, including survivorship. SHB is the answer. The lone reasonable objection I can think of to this human energy is that as SHB increases in value, the pressure to intensively harvest the feedstock, both wet and dry, may, through over-hasty but understandable actions, result in some not inconsiderable reduction of human beings/consumers worldwide. I freely admit this, and it is a principal reason I have offered here my innovation for turning the pointless waste of human lives into a valuable commodity. Although saying so may seem as insensitive as Scrooge speaking of surplus population in Christmas season, when so much of the world celebrates a particularly remarkable birth with a particularly remarkable burst of consumer spending, let no one speak of this as insensitive until voluntary population control, VPC, voluntary simplicity, VS, voluntary sustainable economics, VSE, or the voluntary human extinction movement, VHEMT, produce at least some real glimmer of hope for extinguishing the double-headed flame of rampant consumerism and overpopulation. Let no one object to my innovation as sensitive or insensitive or cruel. There's little that could be more insensitive or cruel than the treatment both of human beings and of the natural world under the current system. Assuming some invisible demographic hand will magically extinguish both flanks of that consumption/population wildfire is worse than silence or inaction. It is delusion. Until another innovator puts forward a plan for addressing our global firestorm in a way that is more altruistic, beneficial, and effective than my innovation presented here, the sounding of alarms on all the collateral damage resulting from the current world system, on climate crisis, pandemics, deforestation, desertification, overfishing, ongoing extinctions, nuclear waste, dead reefs, acidified oceans, toxic algal blooms, and the rest of the horrific litany of biosphere collapse, sounding the alarm on all that is even more pointless than arguing over deck chairs on the Titanic. It's arguing over beach chairs on a rapidly shrinking iceberg when the polar bears are very hungry after a very long swim. Because I have no interest in becoming another billionaire in another satellite villa passing blithely by over our heads, I offer this innovation to the general public for the public's good alone. Without any thought of financial remuneration. I seek no medals or knighthoods or prizes. A silent statue in a quiet park is enough recognition for me. Thank you. You can clap.
Thank you so much, Howard. Next up, we have Jiang. Jiang is a Chinese-Canadian writer, Ignite Award winner, Hugo, Astounding, Nebula, Locust, Bram Stoker, and BSFA Award finalist, and an immigrant from Fujian, currently residing in Toronto, Ontario. Her work can be found in fantasy and science fiction, The Dark, The Master's Review, among others. She is also the author of Linguin and I Am I. Tonight, she is going to be reading Ancestor Code Air. Over to you, I.
So it seems we're gonna continue the environmental theme. So this is Ancestor Code Error, which I wrote yesterday. So currently unpublished. It is 3024, and there are no longer shrines, long since washed away by nature's fury in the form of quakes that split across continents, countries, cities, down schools, fields, homes neatly in two. You are to receive the memories of a late mother, a late father, and the memories of all those who came before them, who now rest beneath the surface of the earth as a part of the soil, sediments, layers of history ground down and packed together, evolution and extinction pressed into sheets upon sheets upon sheets. They say there are populations of extinct humans who look to their ancestors for guidance. If this is true, why have their ancestors guided them towards their own destruction? If this is true, why do their ancestral spirits no longer wander the earth? You rebuild a shrine among broken stones, the flattest plane you can find within walking distance, and balance a dented vessel you discovered hidden beneath broken pipes, tangled, rusted, folded. You use the vessel as an incense holder and scatter what remains of a stranger's family in the form of objects burned into ashes. Ripped photos, torn clothing, a pair of glasses missing its frame, a bracelet without its charm. Because their bones have been eaten when the world decided to wake, yawn, and swallow her unsuspecting inhabitants, saying enough is enough. When she got sick of breathing in smog instead of untainted atmosphere, drinking pollution and acid instead of fresh and naturally salted waters, eating discarded humanity rather than fresh fruit born, ripened, fallen. But there are no jaw sticks, nothing for you to light, and in your palm is a single nanochip. Its dull blue glints like veins, like pulsing nerves, even though it is almost as far from alive as you are. But it's the only color standing out in the rubbled landscape of a city that once was and now isn't. From a pore at the back of your neck, you insert the ancestor code. Generations held within encrypted lines of letters and numbers and symbols, collected, then passed on, the same way humans make descendants to carry their blood, name, legacy that is eventually forgotten, if not written down. You are a corpse of their existence, a vessel of their religion, a carcass of their rise and fall, a skeleton of their history. And what you expect to see once the ancestor code populates your system are the wars, the battles, the deaths, the destruction, the scars with which they had left the earth with as a species. You do not expect to bear the weight of their memories. Instead, the guilt of their killings, the pain of their loss, the light waning from young eyes unseeing, from old bones unfeeling, of life being birthed through torn tissues and the spill of blood. The way entire civilizations fall simply because a single being was allowed to continue to breathe and had used each of their breaths to take the gasps of another. You see the faces lost and found, engraved into the earth's mountains, grooves, troughs, like fingerprints, a reminder of how humanity has terraformed the earth, not just with their footprints, but with their minds and names and ideas. But just as you are about to reach where it all began, to the memory of the very first human, before they were human, before they had even spoken their very first word, took their first step, made their first mistake, grasped their first victory, before the existence of language and technology, the ancestor code short circuits, fizzles at the base of your neck, and what scrolls in front of your eyes before color returns to the gray landscape of the world like a volcano unerupting is error. Thank you.
Thank you so much, I. Next up, we have Hailey Piper. Hailey Piper is the Bram Stoker award-winning author of Queen of Teeth, A Light Most Hateful, The Worm, and The Worm and His King series, and other books of dark fiction. She is also the author of over 100 short stories appearing in Weird Tales, Pseudopod, Cosmic Horror Monthly, Cast of Wonders, and various other publications. Her nonfiction appears in Writer's Digest, Library Journal, Crime Reads, and elsewhere. She lives with her wife in Maryland, where their occult rituals are secret. I'm going to hand it over to Hailey to read her story, All the Hated Creatures.
Hello. All the Hated Creatures. My first and only lover was Artan of the 9 sky worms. Few of my sisters could say they ripened eggs with him. When the doorways opened, I was proud to carry his unborn children into the new nest world. But its sooty air sickened me. The bone beasts born here had poisoned their green, death-destined, purposeless creatures, almost. Their ends meant our children's beginnings, mine and Artan's especially. No more poison then, only healthy green for our children to eat, to grow strong. Unlike bone beasts, we had purpose. Some distance from my doorway, I found one of their stone mounds and crawled inside. There was no green in its tunnels and too much clutter. I'm slender among my sisters, but even I couldn't wriggle through without knocking over hard golden tools and a small stringy pet that had somehow been carved from the green. A larger animal squawked at me as I crept across its toothy face, but it didn't bite. Useless guard creatures. When the bone beasts were gone, I hoped their pets would die too. 2 bone beasts came to check the noise. They were neither vibrant blue like my sisters, nor translucent prisms like the 9 sky worms, and they walked on harsh legs that jutted only from their bottom parts. Disgusting. I held their firm, repulsive bodies only long enough to stab them with my stinger and make them sleep. They kept no earthen nectar nearby that would wash their oily residue off my body, and even if they had, I couldn't leave once I'd filled their nest flesh with eggs. The 9 skyworms loved for eternity, but mated with each partner only once. My children would someday boast that they were the only offspring of Artan and 12. They needed protection while their shells absorbed simple proteins. While the nest flesh slept, I crawled into an alcove to watch and wait and dream of no more bone beasts, their pets, or their sooty air. The skies would clear for Artan and his fellow royals, the 9 joining us from every corner of home. Love would find a way. After a time, the bone beasts awoke together and patted their hardened middles. Crackling sounds cut from their throats, some crude communication, and then they looked at glowing tools, eyes to far parts of their nest world. They showed open doorways from home, hatching broods and screaming, fleeing bone beasts. My sisters worked fast, but soon my children too would hatch, a purpose fulfilled. The glowing tools darkened, and the bone beasts grew quiet. They rubbed appendages at each other's faces. They almost seemed to understand their role in my purpose, but how could that be? Simple animals, they had destroyed their own nest world, made it too filthy for the 9 skyworms to fly. Only fools would desecrate their nest world against skyworms. Even children knew better. One bone beast sat beside the large pet and stroked bony appendages across its teeth. They must have trusted each other. The other bone beasts picked up the smaller stringy pet and slid an odd branch across its front. Their animal screeched at first, and then, oh, What sound was this? Animal cries, but pleasant. I'd never heard anything like it before. The animals had made awful noises when I crept across them, but I must have been hurting them. With the touch of their bone beasts, they found symbiosis. Sweet song, I called it. Was this the bone beast's purpose? They couldn't save their green or their lives, but its power made my muscles quiver as they had when Artan last laid 100 eyes on me. His purpose slid from my mind. Sweet song was beauty for its own sake. What splendor these bone beasts couldn't accomplish by sight, they created in sound. I could have listened forever. The seated bone beast jerked hard and fell from its toothy pet. Prone and jittering, it cried out not pleasant sweet song, but pain song. Its bony appendages tore at its flesh until its wet eyes went still, and then only its midsection trembled. Mine and Artan's children were hatching. The other bone beast dropped its stringy pet and grabbed the fallen nest flesh. It made crackling noises again, but its companion couldn't respond. Fluids washed down its face. No, I didn't want this. I wanted sweet song. I descended from my hiding place, wrapped myself around the stringy pet, and thrust it at the still living bone beast's chest. Touch, I told it. Make sweet song. But it was too simple to understand our speech, and had too little time to learn. It slumped beside its companion, convulsing and bleeding. Both their middles split at once, birthing twin blue rivers of my wriggling children. I ignored them and tried running my body across the large pet's teeth. It still didn't bite, but squawked discordant cries like when I first touched it. Nothing sweet. The stringy pet hardly cried at all. They would not make sweet song for me. We were not compatible. Their biology intertwined with their bone beasts, and now that one side in that symbiotic bond had gone silent, so would the other. They were going silent all across the nest world. Purpose, purpose, that is what we brought, but no one had thought of the cost. Children slithered under my body and probed with demanding tongues, oblivious to the biological miracle that had died in birthing them. I was supposed to feed them. They were mine, my purpose. But what of it? There was little beauty in them, and they could never make sweet song.
Thank you so much, Hailey. That was Hailey Piper with All the Hated Creatures. Before that, we heard from Jiang with Ancestor Code Error, and opening the show was Howard V. Hendrix with A Most Humble Innovation. Coming up next, on April 30th, we're going to be hosting an online reading and interview with Samantha Mills, author of The Wings Upon Her Back, a fabulous debut novel. And the next Flash Science Fiction Night will be coming up on May 21st with readers K.C. Griffant, Laura Blackwell, and Denise Dumars. Thank you so much to our audience for being here tonight. Thank you so much to all of our readers for sharing these wonderful stories, and we hope to see you all next time.